Well, welcome everyone to this episode of Finding Focus with Kathleen Davenport. I'm your host, and today I have an awesome guest that I'm very excited who's joined me, and that's Todd Siegel from Virginia, correct? Did I get from Southern
Yep.
Virginia? Where it's a
Uh-huh.
little bit colder than where I am here in Hawaii.
Williamsburg, Virginia.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I wanted to especially have Todd on my podcast because he's been the psychic medium that I've known for several years. I'm trying to go back, and I think it's been at least 5 or 6 years that
Mhm.
we've been connected and that I've had readings from Todd. And I've also followed the work that he does through his own podcasts on social media, um, and information that he puts out, and I'm fascinated with the work that he does. So, I especially wanted to have him here to talk about his work because it's so interesting and I think it's so timely. And so I just want to let Todd tell me and tell our listeners here about himself. I could read everything that he's got on his website that's available. And Todd, you're welcome to share your website. And I will also put it in our show notes so that they can get to know you as in even more in depth. But just wanted to open it up by having you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. And again, thank you for being here.
I hate talking about myself. Do you know a man that doesn't like talking about himself? That's kind of a rare thing,
Yes.
actually.
So
Give him a few drinks and he'll really talk about himself. But yeah, I where do I start? Well, let's start kind of how you came to me. I actually remember
yes.
the missing hiker in Maui. A woman from the mainland, she was missing in the forest, out in Maui, I think, and it was on the national news. She was a hiker, and they don't know what happened to her. They just found her car and she was missing, and a whole bunch of people were trying to urge me. They said, "Look, why don't you tell them what you get?" I said, "I'm not gonna just barge in and tell them who I am. They'll think I'm crazy." So they said, no, there's actually, they had set up a tip line for psychics. They said, we like psychics to tell us where this woman is. This was 2019, I believe. And so I sent in email to them. I didn't want to call them. I sent an email. And I think I heard from you because I think it was posted somewhere or you found it.
I
I know it's a long time ago, but I remember that you were blown away because I gave a description of this area up in this forest. There was a waterfall. I'm going to the right. I remember I'm trying to describe where I'm going. There was no markers there. And is she okay? Yeah, I think she's okay. Hurt. She was kind of hurt. I think hurt her leg or something like that. And they found her. And I was working with a PR person at that time who's said, this is huge. I'll tell the news about it. I said, well, she says the news is all coming out of Hawaii right now. It's out of Hawaii. And I think I might be late with this story. Anyway, I'm like, I don't care, whatever. But I think somehow you remembered that story. And I think that's how you came to me, if I'm remembering
it
correctly.
it was that story, but then there was a follow-on one the following year where I even more connected with you because I think that story prompted, um, everyone who was involved in this other search for an elderly gentleman
The man, yeah,
who had
yeah,
dementia, and he was
yes,
actually my neighbor about 6 houses down who had wandered away, and his family was looking for him. So, yes, the one, experience or input that you gave led to this other connection.
yeah.
And
I mean, I can't remember who I spoke to yesterday for a reading. It's my mind, but when we're going long term, I remember back and the man, I think, was in an area that couldn't be accessed
exactly right.
by foot. I mean, it was really dense jungle, and I remember saying to you, I'm like, "I don't know what kind of creatures you have out there, but I'm seeing a pig." I
Mm,
remember,
yeah.
eh, I think you it was a wild
Yes, and
pig,
we're
and
so accurate about that. The search parties, I wasn't in an active well, I guess I was, and we were searching for him.
yeah,
Eventually, they found his jacket in a area such that you described because we were looking in areas that you described, but they found his jacket, at someone's backyard,
uh-huh,
or somehow it wound up in somebody's backyard. He must have crossed, but the backyard was on the edge of a mountainside. Was a
yeah,
lot of the dense exactly right, the dense brush, and they actually had to get, professional, search and rescue teams to be able to because they just wouldn't let average civilians, they said it's just far too dangerous to
yeah,
try to
yeah,
get into that area. Well, that area also is known for the wild pig trails. So everything was and they eventually did unfortunately find his body about,
yeah,
in that area, but it was exactly that, very dense brush, pig trails, farmland, other things that you had described.
yeah, yeah, that's very sad, I think about, why did I come to this work? Because some of the stuff that I see is really gruesome, you
Mm,
know? I had to look at autopsy pictures, and I had to look at really, well, you get the energy from there's some really bad people out there, and, sometimes that can affect you when you do this work, and a lot of people wonder if it's just, how does it all work? And anyway, we'll talk about that, I guess. But I don't really know how it all works completely. When I started, I was like in my mid 30s. I'm actually I'm in my mid 20s now, mentally. Even though I turned 60 last year, I'm still like 25, I think.
yeah, I like that, I'll go with that, it works for me too. So
But yeah, in my mid 30s, I started, and
now
but
did you always start out or did you start out in kind of doing ge generic readings, which then you kind of now specialize in the psychic detective arena and
yeah.
mediumship, correct? But did you
I started, actually, yeah, so, I was in my mid-30s. I was living in Massachusetts where I lived a long time, and, I ran a bed and breakfast. I did a lot of things. I had a farm, an old New England farm. In fact, I'm looking at the old original sign that I painted for my bed and breakfast. It's on my wall here. Maybe I'll show that later, but, um and, I started that in 1991, and just on a fluke, I moved from California to New England, and I just fell in love with this farm out in the middle of nowhere, and, opened a bed and breakfast. The place was full, packed with people, like, all year long, so I had to work really, really hard. It was an old 1800s house, and it had, a lot of spirits in it and the land, and I just became transformed in that house. But I met with guests in the morning, and, a lot of times I would plant my gardens outside, I use an astrology calendar, you
Mm,
know, and I would so I dabbled a little bit in astrology. I didn't know a lot, but people would sit down at the table would ask them when was their birthday, and they'd tell me their birthday, and so I would look on my calendar, "Oh, this looks like a pretty good week for you," and I would tell them things, but I noticed that I was telling them things that weren't associated with anything of the time and place. Like, "Next month, you're getting promoted." I don't know how, okay? Or and then they would ask me questions, "Well, do you think my son will ever get out of drugs? He's got a bad drug habit." And I wasn't even looking at anything, and I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I think he will." Um, they're like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, I don't know. I have a feeling about it." So it started that way. And then they would come back for another visit to the bed and breakfast, and they'd say, "Oh my God, how do you know that? This came true." And then one day I was doing these little readings for guests. So one weekend I had a regular customer and she had her girlfriend come. And we're sitting down at the table, and the girlfriend says, "I hear you're pretty good at doing readings for people." And I said, "Well, I can try." So she says, "What does my week look like now?" And I was really doing psychic work at that time. I wasn't using any tools or any methods. And I told her, I said, "Well, you better watch out for your boss. He kind of likes you." She was a nurse, and she says, "Oh my God, you're right about that." And she was from the Connecticut area, and she says, "That all?" I said, "No." I said, "Tuesday, I wouldn't even go out of your house." And she says, "Why?" "I just have a feelings that you should just stay home." And I didn't give her any reason. I didn't have any reason why I was telling her that. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. I said, "No, it's not you personally. It just feels around you."
mm,
Well, I got a call Tuesday morning. It was September 11th, 2001,
gosh.
and her friend called me, and, back then didn't have cell phones or
Right.
computers. Her friend was yelling. She's like, "What'd you tell her? What'd you tell her?" She says, "There's planes going into buildings here. Look on your TV, go look." So I was in my barn, I had to go over to my TV, and I couldn't believe my eyes, and I talked about this for a little while with my friend. I said, "I don't know, this is driving me crazy. I don't know why I saw that." Then from there on, I wanted to research it, but I was a skeptic of this kind of stuff for many years. So every time something would come true, I'm like, well, it's just a coincidence. And then, after 1,001 coincidences, I started to take it serious. So I actually went to a psychic, an unknown person, not in the media. And then I went to one more psychic who actually became a friend of mine, and he was a psychic detective. And slowly I was going into this, but I never went professional until I would say probably in my early 40s is when I really started.
Mhm.
Um, and I had to convince myself to do it because I was a contractor. I was working on people's homes, and I was a really good woodworker. I was a cabinet maker, furniture. And I was in quite a demand in my area. It was all second homeowners, and I was the only one who could fix old houses, like in my wood shop, I would make the molding, and I would make everything look like the old architecture.
Wow.
So, I had a really I was busy with that. I was boarding horses for people, um, and I was doing my own horse stuff. I was competing with my horses. I was carriage driver, and I was a jack of all trades, but I had a busy life. But the psychic work eventually in my 40s became so demanding that I stopped carpentry work altogether.
Interesting.
And, I was like carpenter during the week, and then on the weekend, I'd take calls. But it wasn't easy when I first started. I helped people with missing pets in the area.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how do you describe what you do as a psychic detective when people say, "Okay, so what exactly do you do?" How do you describe it?
So, just like our strengths and our weaknesses and our personality, each intuitive person has an ability. Now, they can learn certain things too. Like if you have a missing dog, I wouldn't exactly call a medium to help you. Not that they aren't good at what they do, but it's not what they do. It's kind of like if you're a carpenter and you just do framing, and I ask you to, do some kitchen work and some molding, you're going to be like, I don't really do that. I can learn how to do it, but I don't install marble sinks and stuff.
Right.
Um, so it's just like that. And I just probably because of my background as a farmer and a carpenter and being a Virgo type,
Mhm.
strong Virgo type, I just I could pull out details from situations that were very important for detective work.
That's so interesting that you segued from the carpentry work into the detailed work that you do now, or that the details matter, and I think that's what's so I like looking at people's present past, but also what they've probably done in past lives and how that all connects through
Mhm,
the ages and through our lifetimes, and we can go into past life discussion also, because I find that fascinating. But I think it's so interesting that as a carpenter, as not that I've done woodwork, but what I know about it enough is that things have to fit.
mhm.
And I just see that in the work that you do as a psychic detective, that you not making it fit, but looking for the details to put everything into place, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing that a detective would on the case, is I'm trying to find evidence.
Mhm.
He's making phone calls and he's looking out in the field for evidence. I'm doing the same exact thing in here. And it's not really the mind. So it's kind of like I remember one of the questions you posted is it your imagination or is it something else? Because I've got a really, strange imagination because I was a artist when I was younger. I got, all I have that creative imagination, but it's absolutely nothing to do with that. It's complete vision. On the mediumship side, I was working in old houses, 200-year-old houses, and I would tell the owner about the spirits that I'm looking at. And if they were, into it, they'd say, "Oh, yeah, there was a doctor who lived here, and you're describing who he was, and I didn't even know the history of the house." So, it's a vision that comes through like a portal that we all should have, but not everybody has it.
Mhm.
Some people can develop what they have, but it might come out a little different than what a detective might look at, you
Mm.
know? Some people have premonitions, like they all of a sudden they're thinking somebody's gonna call them on the phone and the phone rings. The It's so it doesn't really have to do with the mind as much as like the brain part of the mind, as best I can figure it, and, um, everybody does their abilities different. Some have to be laying down, some go by dreams, although to me, dreams are very subliminal, you know, the subconscious. There's just so many layers
Yeah.
inside our mind that it's not I think intuition's not really filtered through the brain so much, it's just coming right to you.
And I asked that question, or I'm fascinated around this discussion because I get a lot of people who ask me, "So or they'll say, "I'm a very logical thinker. I'm the logical brain." And me with my military background, uh,
Yeah,
you have to be in that logical mindset. You gotta be able to put, "Okay, here's the facts on paper," etcetera.
but you have to be intuitive too.
Yes, and to be able to put
And
it
and somebody in the military and somebody in law enforcement has got way more intuition than they think they have. They use their instinct.
and they don't really recognize that's where I think people are questioning and asking because they know that they have this logical sense of putting things in order. But when it comes to trusting their intuition,
Yeah.
they wanna let the logical brain override that intuition, so they tend to downplay it. Would you say that's what you've found in talking with people about this?
They sometimes will come upon something they can't explain, but they'll come up with an answer to explain it. But they'll cover their I had one, um I was working on a case one time, and there was one police officer working on the case with the others with me, and he just wrote to me and he said, I don't dare discuss this with anybody, but when I look at people, I can see things. I can see what they've done. I can see." And I said, "Well, it's that. Will he be discussing it in front of his boss? No." But but people who are very engaged in the action part of life in the military, and I do get a lot of military people that come to me, um, they have a very heightened intuition, but they have to clothe it with logic and facts and the books, and they can't explain it. Um, it's usually the ones who hate the work who end up being the most good at it sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting
And
because
the other thing about, it's just kind of well, it's not a fact, but it's something that I believe. I believe people in the military had a past life in the military before because they are very drawn to it, well, in their past life, it gives them a purpose in life that they were very involved with before, so when they come to this new life, I believe they remember that and are drawn to the military, you
mm,
know? They're definitely not drawn to it because of paid vacations and
right.
benefits and, and being at home all the time, you know? But I definitely think when I look at people, like, even in law enforcement, I know previous life they were doing the same thing, a lot of them.
See, isn't that's what I find so fascinating about delving into people's past lives is that there's a pattern. There is a very definite pattern to what they did previously, to what they might be not doing today, but they feel drawn to it and they can't
Yeah.
explain it. And I just
Yeah.
find that so interesting.
Yeah. I came into this life very worried from age 1. I had just, my nervous system, was very heightened. I didn't like being around certain people when I was younger. Of course, when I was a teenager, if you said I was gonna become a psychic, I would have laughed at you. I would have, "Oh, yeah, right." Even up to my 30s, I didn't, you know, I didn't have any attraction to mediumship or psychics. But when I look on my past when I was younger, oh, yeah, what's strange is I've come across some friends in recent years who I grew up with when I was younger. And then finally it came down to the conversation, "Well, what do you do, Todd?" And I would tell them. And I swear, one of my closest friends, he's true blue, buff guy, goes hunting, motorcycle riding, couple years older than me. And he paused for a minute. He says, "I'm not surprised."
Interesting.
Says, "Things that you knew when you were younger and the life and all this stuff. Oh, yeah, it totally makes sense." So I was surprised by that. Um,
Isn't it interesting, though, that others can see things in you before you can see it in yourself?
yeah, for sure. I don't know anything about me, and that's the frustration about us. When you're intuitive, you can't really see for yourself.
Okay, I was just gonna ask you that because that's the same thing. That's why I go to you for readings because I can't read myself. Even as a life coach, when I was just doing traditional life coaching,
Yeah.
I was even taught you can't coach yourself. That's why coaches have coaches.
You can You can help yourself through certain things, but anything that requires an emotional opinion about yourself or something that's not biased about you, because you might say, I want to do I want to do this kind of work right now, but you're like, no, 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 I can't do that. I'll never do that. Okay. Psychic might say, "No, you're gonna be very good at it," but it's kind of how we feel about ourselves that kind of blocks it,
Mhm.
and then, there's also a lot of mystery, like, where does this stuff come from? I mean, and when I came into this work, there's psychics everywhere,
Yeah.
and and I really didn't wanna do this work. I wrestled with it, but people would come to me and they needed my help. Even my first murder case she was grateful. She had nobody to help her find her son, and, I was working with her and the police, and this was in Massachusetts and Springfield, Mass, and, we found her son. I also worked on the case with her and got the whole thing, and, after that, I'm like, "Well, how can I not do this?"
Right? Right?
But I was embarrassed, I was embarrassed when my daughter was born. You hang out with other parents, from the school and stuff, and, "Hi,
It
Todd, what do you do?" "I'm a lawyer." "What do you do, Todd?" "I'm a psychic."
see, okay.
"Uh,
I can so get that. It's interesting to hear you say that too because I've, really just started work not that I mean, I delved in psychic phenomena, just I read about it since I was young, and I've always had an intuitive side to me, but really kind of put it away, kind of hid it under the other stuff that I did because it wasn't the right thing to do. Here I was in the military. You don't announce to especially with the top secret security clearance, you don't tell people
yeah."
that. I can sense things. And then, I ran for political office and you definitely don't tell people that you can read people.
Yeah,
better
because
than
reading
others.
politicians is not good, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Um,
So it's
um,
interesting. So it's been like you just said, it's to be able to really acknowledge what you do and how you serve. I think that takes a fair amount of, really knowing who you are and honoring that. And the courageousness to step up and say, "Yeah, this is me. This is who I am," and not worrying about the others anymore.
I think a part of you, when I look into it, actually knew that you had abilities, but you were afraid of the answers that would come to you because you were in hard situations in the past.
Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah, that's
I
absolutely
think
true.
a part of you just I don't
Didn't
yeah,
wanna face it. Didn't wanna face it.
yeah,
Absolutely. So true. So
and we
true.
can do that. I mean, I've been in hard situations in my life and, I use my I can do it for others, but to really kind of read myself, I'd have to go to somebody else and discuss it. And do I today? Yeah, I still sometimes will ask uh, somebody I know who's intuitive,
Mhm.
because I just have too many fears of things in myself and things I don't want to know, and I better ask somebody else.
Right?
So you were busy, and now you've come into it. And
Yes.
what's interesting is that, well, it's sort of, um, with people come about it in different stages in their life. Uh, Usually, I say up till about 7 or 8 years old, a child will have very strong abilities
Uh,
intuitively, naturally. And then what happens is they become normalized and they, go to school, eat your dinner, do this. This is what you need to believe, you need to start going to school. And it sort of dissipates, it blocks that.
mhm.
Now, sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes maybe they're intuitive growing up, but their teen years are so traumatic, it awakens that intuition. And that's why a lot of teenagers can sometimes go through some really hard emotional times. Doctors are saying they have this and they have that, this condition, that condition, they have ADHD, they have all. Sometimes it's a little more than that. Sometimes it's not just their physical condition. It could be a past life they went through, that they're acknowledging, or they might be seeing some really bad stuff around their parents or their home that's really driving them crazy. It's a kind of like an involuntary response to what they're going through. Um, but I didn't really, well, I shouldn't say I didn't have it, but I didn't really acknowledge it till my late 30s.
Mhm.
And, um, but everybody is different. So with you now, I feel that, it's been many years coming into when you can release the pressures that you were in
Yeah.
to finally make a new life for yourself. And that opened it up.
Yeah, and it just feels, finally just and it was really only about a little over a year ago that I finally just acknowledged it. I was encouraged to just they said, I've always known there was something more." I mean, I went through different career phases, did different things that were all part of my quote unquote calling, but I always felt there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. And I said, I really know what this is, but it's really hard to step into it until I was encouraged to step into it and just start doing these readings. And I thought, okay, I don't know. And so I was doing a bunch of free readings for a group of women, and
Yeah.
they said, "Oh my gosh!" And one of the other women in there herself was a very developed psychic, and she said, and she didn't tell me that ahead of time, and she said, "Girl, you got more going on than you know." 'Cause I saw some things for her and explained some things about her, and she goes, "Oh, No, don't doubt yourself. She said, "Step into this." So that was really what encouraged me, and once you kind of let all those other things go, I quit worrying about what other people would think. It lingered
Yeah.
for a while, and it's so freeing, though. Just be who you're meant to be and serve how you are designed to serve. For me, it just feels so much I feel so much more at ease now.
I have a story kinda connected to that actually. Yeah, I was in kind of a hard phase in my life, probably in my 40s, and, um, I went to, made an appointment with a psychic who, was on I'm not gonna mention her name, but she was on a TV series for a short time. She was very well known. She was psychic and medium. And so I made an appointment with her. She didn't know who I was at all. And I guess I was like early 40s. So uh, she says, "You sound so depressed." And I said, "Well, I've had a lot going on. I've got to make this trip out west and. And she said, she said, "How's your work going?" And I said, "Well," I said, I've got a contract starts in the spring on this house that I'm working on, so that's all I've got right at the moment." She's like she's like, "No, I'm not talking about carpentry." She says, "Talking about your work." And I said, "Oh, you know, I yeah, you do what I do." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know you knew that." So, I really didn't reveal to her, and I was fully a psychic at that time, but I was also being a carpenter too. And so she said, "Well," um, I said, I started off slow. I didn't wanna deal with too many people's stuff, so I was working with missing animals and stuff like that, and then it's grown into all sorts of psychic work. Um, and I said, do you think I'm gonna be any good at this?" And she said to me, she said, "There's a small handful, just a small handful of people that I know in the world who have an ability that's very different. It's like kind of psychic on steroids sort of ability where they can see stuff. I mean, really see stuff like thousands of miles away or wherever." And she said, "You're one of those people." And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Oh my." I said, "Really?" I and I really doubted it. I'm like, "Oh God," She said, "You're depressed because you're not doing that work."
Oh, isn't that profound?
So a lot of times intuitive people, they have to be doing something in this field so they don't go through real depression in their life. It's kind of like being a police officer and then you're retiring. I mean,
Mhm.
what the hell are you gonna do? You were in a on-demand job day after day, and now you're just gonna sit on the couch. It's gonna be well, maybe some might like it, but it's gonna get depressing after a while.
Dang, I know. So, yeah, I am
And military careers are not long lasting.
not long lasting and yeah, it's such a different feeling when you can step into what you're supposed to be doing, really. So I think that was so interesting and profound that she said, "No, what about the work? What about your work?"
Yeah, now I wanna get out of it. I'm like, I no, really, I've toned down what I'm doing. I keep getting people who want to see videos of me on social media, and I'm not doing them. It's hard for me to do podcasts and I just don't I don't know. I've gone into a very different phase right now where, yeah, I still do appointments and, it's fine, but I'm trying to keep the exposure down. I'm actually working on kind of a retirement career right now, which is, well, I was telling you that I used to be a surfer, and I used
Yes,
to surf in
that's
Hawaii, and
I
I
l
used
I love that connection.
and, growing up, I was pretty good. I mean, I won the Malibu Classic, well, 1 time and 2nd place the 2nd time,
Wow.
and then I surfed Oahu and Maui and Kauai, and so I was big at that time. Also, I became a windsurfer in my late teens, early 20s. So last year, turning 60 was catastrophic for me. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
It comes
And
on very quickly, doesn't it? I'm
so,
there and a little bit ahead of you, so
and so my girlfriend asked me, she says, "What do you want to do this year?" I said, "I want to windsurf."
yeah,
The
great.
surfing sucks in Virginia. Um, and I wanna get back into windsurfing, and then I wanna make that my retirement career. I want to teach it. And I've
Great.
given myself 2 years. I started back in August, and I hurt my back before I even started, and I was out for a whole month. I never had back issues anyway, so September, I start with a coach, guy out down North Carolina, and he put me through boot camp. I had several lessons with him, and all the way up until this cold spell, I've been out in the water windsurfing.
Wow. Wow.
And and, I so I've been trying to tone down, this profession, but it's not as easy as that because, there's so many clients and people who come to me. By the way, here's a picture.
Wow. Is that the recent one? I can't tell, or is that the one is it
Yeah, it's a
very
recent one.
wow. And
Yeah,
that's
that was just about a month ago.
wow.
That was actually during a pre-Christmas, Santa, Santa sale out
That's
on the bay. So
I can see you doing that. I mean, you just light up already.
it's
Uh,
physically, it's physically harmful. I mean, the amount of physical work in it, is incredible, but there's just a part of me that says, when you reach a certain point, a certain age, you got 2 choices. You can just sit around and relax, or you can really amp things up. And I think amping things up sometimes will keep you going longer.
you know, it does. I golf, as you
Yeah,
know, I golf with but some of my best golfing social golfing buddies, they're in their 80s. I
yeah,
have a great friend, he's a retired police officer.
yeah,
He's 82. I have another guy, he's 86, and I'm like, "Dang, I should just be walking to the golf cart." Like, you guys are out
right.
hitting the balls.
Yeah.
Now it is funny because, the one friend, Buzzy, I play with him, and he can't always see where the ball goes. I mean, he's 82 and walks a little slow.
That
So
could be a good thing too.
so I'm there, I watch where his ball goes, and then he brought along another friend, and that guy could see where his ball goes. He was in his 80s, but he couldn't remember where he hit it. He couldn't remember where his ball landed.
Oh,
So you can imagine I'm playing with these 2 guys, and one can't see where his ball goes, the other one can't remember which is so he's going up to I said, "No, Billy, that's Buzzy's ball. You don't hit that one." I was exhausted at the end of the
they should work together.
you know what? Good on them. They're still out there having a good time, still working on perfecting their skills and doing something that they absolutely love. And I just
Yeah, I mean, I think that golfing's great. And my mother, she's gonna be 85 and she still plays golf.
that's what I love about it. You can still everybody plays it. You play to your own game and what you can
Yeah.
do, and you meet wonderful people and enjoy it. So
Well, you're in a very good phase right now that will, so if I see down the line for you, it's good, but, next year could be personally complicated for you with, somebody on the scene in your life, and, so you've got a pretty good soap opera going on here for a while.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I always appreciate your insight, Todd, because it's always you've been doing readings for me for well over 5, 6 years, and, I just like to check in with you. I know you mentioned one time that I was connecting with you probably once a month for a few months there, and at one point you said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, Todd, I just like to check in. There really wasn't anything wrong, but it's just nice to keep that compass and
yeah.
have that validation."
It also funny enough with an intuitive person, when 2 intuitive people speak to each other, sometimes it's not the words of that person that helps you, but it's something that you get off of that person that helps you see clear, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yes, it does.
If I'm talking to somebody on the phone I've never spoken to before, I mean, I don't know how, but I know they're very intuitive themselves, and a lot of times it can mean a lot of trouble for them, um, knowing things that other people don't know, and, making decisions based on their intuition against people's wishes can be hard. So, yeah, there's some people that have it. They aren't psychics, by trade, but they're so damn psychic that their lives are often a mess because of what they do.
Yeah.
Uh, and, like a lot of people, I'll tell people I'm helpful to some. I'm very crucial to other people, in many ways. And then I can even be very dangerous.
Is there anything that you maybe you'll get, but maybe you won't share with them? Is there at some points that you make that discernment that maybe this isn't something that I want to share with them at this time, or they're not
There's been some incidents where I knew things about people that they didn't want me to know.
okay.
And in fact, one got into a visit to the detectives at the police station because of
Oh, wow.
it was somebody's boyfriend, and I knew stuff about him that he heard about. And I can look on TV and just glance at some public figures, and you got to think about it. I already know things about them that
Wow.
they wouldn't want me to know about.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it can be very dangerous in that respect. It's something I don't publicize,
Mhm,
but if we have a major crisis or something in the country, and I kind of know who's behind it.
mhm,
Not all the time, but, uh, it's just there's that aspect that it can be risky, you
mm,
know? But thankfully, there's not a lot of belief in this country in this kind of work, and that makes it a little easier sometimes. I know you mentioned something about what Hollywood and movie pictures have done.
yeah.
No, and does that paint a good picture? Well, not exactly. Um, there was one movie called The Hearts in Atlantis with
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins. Good movie, and, he's a psychic for the government, kinda run away from the government, and, it's very very similar to kind of what I do. Some of the details are Hollywood
Yeah. Yeah.
fantasy, but you gotta sell a movie, so you gotta make it look good in that respect. But the story was wonderful, cast was great, but I remember that movie. But there's a lot of other Hollywood stuff, not just Hollywood stuff, but the notoriety out there of psychics and stuff that, well, some are okay, some are not okay.
Mhm.
I'll leave it at that.
Right, right.
Oh, what were you asking me? I don't wanna get off topic here.
I'm no, I'm just loving this coffee
Um
style conversation and, hopefully we can do this again because there's so
oh,
many
yeah,
things that
sure.
we can talk about. So
Well,
as we
maybe some of your followers have questions too.
okay, yes, I'll be inviting those. And that's why I wanted to have you here because there's questions that I get asked, but I would love to have somebody else's experience
Yeah,
and background to help elaborate on that. So, but as we're winding down, at least for this particular episode, I just wanted to ask, and you can elaborate as much or as little as you'd like.
yeah.
Do you have any particular predictions or just thoughts on anything that you want to share as we just kind of close out this um, little conversation today?
Oh, on the world? Well, we were talking about the weather and,
Yeah,
the East Coast right now, all the way from Maine to Florida is a mess. In Virginia, Southern Virginia, I've never seen these temperatures here before. We get snow, we get cold, but not a prolonged week of teens and below in temperature. I mean, I had everybody has had pipe issues and stuff like that. So we are in an extreme phase. And then, I have friends out in the West Coast that are walking around in t-shirts, it's in the 80s. Southern Hemisphere clients down in Australia said incredibly hot
really.
down there. So scientists have said there's solar activity going on,
And
big solar activity.
I've been watching that and seeing reports on that and how does that affect, I think,
Yeah,
really
big
the
time.
weather, but just our bodies. Because
Yeah,
I can tell, and there's days that I just like feel so off, or am I coming down with the flu or whatever, and then I'll just read that says, "Oh, there was this big solar flare that just erupted."
it's had some impact on electronic stuff. Um, one day I lost two toasters. It's like and a cord to my computer. I had so much, yeah, I had so much weird stuff happening. I thought it was Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
Um, so the eastern part from here to Europe's pretty cold too. Uh, some records have been hit. So I do think it's the solar activity causing that. I also think the planet shifts a little bit, does a little wobble,
Mhm.
which can cause a lot of stuff like that too. As far as the world, well, I think people are, most of my clients, there's so much worry among jobs, finances, but there's an insane amount of people going through emotional problems right now. Um, I can't really target one thing, but this place and time is just, let's put it this way. It's going to be a very good time for intuitive people in many ways but then it seems like there's a dark side of our society that keeps, running into the fire,
Mm,
and it's almost getting worse. It's almost like the divide is getting worse. The ones who are stable, who use their psychic abilities to function with their families and their homes and stuff, they're weathering the storm, but they're seeing a society right now that is, not being enlightened, not shaping up. I mean, you would hope by now that everybody would be on the same page, that they would all be getting together more.
yeah,
I'm not a spiritual person, but, at least have some kind of moral compass to go by,
right?
and it's getting very divided now.
Yeah.
Worse as I have seen.
I believe that. I believe that, and you can just sense it. I mean, even though you do things online, you can sense the divides if you follow
Yeah,
even a minimal amount of social media. You can feel that there. So,
I
I
think I think it's a cultural thing. Um, I don't know anything really about astrology, and I hear sometimes about it, certain things going on, but actually all of the predictions are more towards the positive astrologically. Although this year is, in the Chinese astrology, a very, um, tough year for the world. We're
mm,
in a double fire, the fire horse.
Air Horse, yes.
In China, when 1966, when the fire horse came, there was a record number of abortions.
Interesting.
They would not have a child during the fire
Wow,
horse.
interesting.
They follow that very, well, not everybody, but that is what I've read, and, I've also had some friends. I was born in '65, so a year before, but some of my friends in the fire horse year have had some pretty heavy lives.
Wow,
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, interesting because you read
great
about
people, but,
yeah, this year of the fire horse, I know a lot of people were looking at the year of the snake as the shedding, the time for letting go, realizations of what needed to no longer be in a person's life, and everybody was saying, "Okay, yeah, this year of the fire horse is, renewal, renewed energy, moving forward, galloping strength."
it will be good for a lot of people. It might be a little bit hard if you're a fire sign
Mm,
or a fire year in the
yeah.
Chinese zodiac. So if you're the dog, let's say if you're the fire dog, could be tough. Um, it's actually hard to predict but when I do a reading, it's funny is that first I'll see what's going on with their year, and then sometimes as a backup, I'll say, "When's your birthday?" At the end or something like that, and they'll tell me, "Oh, okay, that makes sense."
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like when I look at a map, when I'm finding missing pets, and people think I look at the map and, put a crystal and try to find. No, what I see is I see first, and then I'll see the name of a street, and then I look on the map and try to find that, and then I find it. So it's kind of the opposite. Um,
Interesting.
the economy will be tough. I mean, it's already tough, but I think about till 2029.
Mhm.
So if you're buying houses or if you're Um, career shifts are okay, but, anything that's like a very heavy long-term risk, be careful with. I feel like 2028 and after will be safer for, big investments like in homes and stuff, but it's the economy is not gonna improve, um, the inflation and everything, not for a very long time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I know that's bad news for some, but, um, anyway.
It's the reality of where we are, and it's good. So, just to leave things on a bright note, you have any bright spot inspiration inspirational
Well
thought or message to leave with everyone?
well, yes, you talk about being a life coach and, boy, we certainly need them because, I don't have a clue as how to get through this life. I mean, this is, sometimes it can be terrifying,
Mm,
and if your thoughts are in the reality of things where, "All right, I'm born, go to school, work a job, get sick, die, that's it, okay." I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people in that train of thought, and it's hard to believe that, there's something more to life, but from now I have to work every day, like, doing psychic work, so I don't really think about it, but when I do step back and I see that this reality that we're in is just a little bit of the huge reality,
yeah,
then you can start to look positively at like, wow, this is just a little tiny
yeah,
part of a very big play that you don't have to get to heaven to understand. There's valuable teachings on this planet right now that can help understand that um, reality of the other, side of life. I mean, when somebody dies, people think that there's up there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, my father's. I'm like, where? It-
right.
what is up there?
Yep, stuck up on the 2nd floor.
Like, what if I told you he's actually right here with
Right.
you, but you
Ex
can't see him, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so many dimensions, many, I mean, there's been philosophers who've talked about this kind of stuff, but they're pretty close. There's just, it's like space, we're sitting there trying to find people are sitting there. It's like, we're trying to find if there's other intelligent life
Mhm.
in the universe, and I'm like, huh. I'm like, "What do you mean?" They said, "We're it." I mean, you think we came from here? We're
Right?
transplants.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this is gonna be a juicy subject for another
So
ep
people oh, getting into these things, and I think you'll probably be getting into this stuff more. The motivational side is, get past the day-to-day stuff. I mean, really look at what's going on, and the psychic can actually I mean, if I can I thought about this a lot. If I can work on cases, find clues for people, I know what's going on up there too. And I've had sessions where I've looked into outer space,
Mhm.
other life. What does it look like? I remember a couple occasions I was freaked out by what I saw.
Wow. Yeah, fascinating.
Freaked out.
Fascinating.
Things I saw about Earth too. I saw another moon. I think we had more than one moon.
Yep, I've read
Mhm.
that. I've heard those. I've heard those. Great discussions.
And our society was actually kind of an accident. It's sort of we restarted. I feel like it was somewhere, maybe around the time of the pyramids. Before then, I'm bad with time schedules, so beyond that, our culture was once, very advanced,
Mhm, mhm.
and we were left. There was some kind of, I don't know, some kind of earth disaster, geographical disaster going on Earth, flooding or fires or both, where we've lost all those memories of that time period. And then, you look back in 16th, 17th centuries, and it's back to the primitive people, and now we're looking at this technical age with all these advances, but we're just about, I mean, even with World Health technology, we're just we're about this much into being advanced.
Yeah.
This much. We gotta get up there. It's good that we're getting there, but
I think we're getting there, and I think people are also remembering.
yeah, that's true.
I think that's the sense that I get, that a lot of people are kind of reawakening to
The
where.
younger generation will, see, I think our DNA has a development factor in it. It's not just, it was actually timed so that further in the future, it's not our brain development that's developing, it's our DNA is altering. And it's like a time released pill.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So the younger generations are going to start tapping into those, technologies, but it's not going to where people think it's going. It's not going into the AI and all that. It's gonna go a little bit more basic, but advanced in other ways, as best I can describe it.
Yeah. S
Yeah.
So much more is out there,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and so many more great discussions. Well, as much as I hate to wrap it up for this session, but I think it's just I so enjoy chatting with you, and I do really would like to have you back again because I think.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And in fact, I'm you know what, so bothered by the weather out here. I'm gonna windsurf out to Oahu. Okay.
Come out here, we'll find you a.
I'll be out there in probably 3 months, but you'll see me. I'll be glued to the sail.
It is, I think we're one of the few places that, despite all the weather upheavals across the mainland and continental US, we're okay here. We're just basically getting our typical winter weather, which, okay, it got in the 60s a couple of nights ago, and and I'm cold. I'm cold.
Yeah.
Really, I'm a Kansas girl. I grew up with this stuff, but
Your volcano will lend to some
yeah,
weird weather
yeah,
things.
we've had that. So, yeah, we've had just, fog and smog, but fortunately, our temperatures have stayed pretty moderate and pretty even, so we're good. We're good.
I see some lightning in a few days, so watch out for thunderstorms.
You know what? That's what they're predicting here in a couple of days this weekend. Now we've got a big golf tournament coming up, so I hope that's off.
I don't know how I knew that, but I was looking at the weather.
Todd, if there's, do you wanna share your website or anything like that if people wanna
Yeah,
learn about
just
you?
toddsiegel.com.
Okay.
No, it's toddSiegelPsychic.com. Um, so if you put up the podcast,
Yeah.
you can just put a link
I'll
underneath.
put it in the show notes that this is how, they could get a
People will
hold.
ask you anyway, but you can
Yep,
put it.
they'll find that out. So, as we wrap up for today, but what I'm hoping
Yeah.
to be just the first of many more conversations with you.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, I just wanna thank you so much for being here. Again, have known you, trust you, love the work that you do, and, you're so insightful and even just so easy to talk to. Even when we're doing the readings, that's what I found. You put everybody at ease and, just wanna connect with you. So I encourage people, reach out, learn a little bit more about Todd and the amazing work that he does, and hopefully you enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to continuing these conversations and hope everybody has a most marvelous day wherever you might be.
Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate coming on here, and, I will think of you as I go outside and it's 35 degrees.
Thanks everybody for being here. I really, really appreciate it.